Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, welcome officially to the channel. This is, as you know from the intro series, where I go into odd gaming accessories or peripherals the developers made to get us more to the game mentally or physically. Well, sometimes. Sometimes they're meant to do the opposite. Sometimes devices are made to keep gamers out of their systems, either to enforce game-like balance or sometimes just as a punishment. There have been a lot of solutions to this. And one particular curiosity was a third-party device known as Homework First. So let's take a look at one of the weirdest and silliest things I've ever seen attached to a console. Since the beginning of games, parents have often struggled with how to moderate or handle their children's time in these digital worlds. Either to make sure they went outside and get some fresh air, I know, it kind of makes me ill too, or as some form of punishment. Often, parents felt somewhat helpless to either understand the appeal of games or how to moderate their children's consumption of them. This was often further aggravated by the media's involvement over the years, often labeling video games as an addiction, which goes back to the early days of the arcade. At the time, there was really no way to handle this save the old standbys. You know, take the console away, remove the power supply, or send the kids to the room. You know, same things. However, someone had a brilliant idea to do something more creative. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the homework first. Yep, it's a padlock. I'm gonna come clean. I've looked at this thing for a while before I did anything with this, and finally Luke's Awakening set into it again, and I was like, fine, let me just scratch my head for a while and figure out how I'm going to talk about this thing and not just go, hey, it's a padlock. And I think I found enough to make this worth your time. You see, this thing came out in 1989. And was designed by a man named Tom Lowe, who was the head of SafeCare. He got the idea to work on something like this after hearing about a friend's 14-year-old son who stayed up all night playing Nintendo instead of studying for his finals. So, he started working on a design for his security system. The design itself was relatively simple. It boiled down to a padlock attached to a U-shaped bar that would block the opening to the NES. It's important to note that this would only work on the first revision of the NES that had the slide tray. It wouldn't do anything for the top loader unit. By design, you would open up the bay to the NES, remove any cartridges. The manual states this is very important. You would then insert the U-bolt into the small bottom hole of the NES, essentially where one of the screws was bolted in, and then place the barrel on top and turn the locking wheels. This would lock the mechanism in place. Now this is where I have questions. Yes, the barrel lock is locked to the U-bolt, but what bolts it to the bottom of the cartridge slot? Can you just rip the barrel off the housing? What the heck does this button do? How do I change the combination? Well, let's look at this thing a little bit closer, shall we? Well, it's been kind of hard to find instructions on this thing. But I did some digging and this is what I found. First off, this thing's only connected the way I described above, meaning the tight fit is the main way this item is staying secured. As for ripping it off the housing, it looks to effectively be a barrel-shaped master lock, so that's unlikely. And the button, it's just there. It's orange. It appears to do nothing. As for changing the combination, this is actually kind of simple. You unlock the unit using the initial code of 0001. I know, spoilers for anybody who didn't know that. And pull the barrel off the housing. You then turn the bottom collar counterclockwise, and that comes off. This exposes the dials so that they can just slide off. To set the combination, you simply slide them back on with the number you want, covering the red pip in the housing itself, and this sets the combination. Now just slide the bottom housing back on and lock it in place, and the combination is whatever you set it to. It's pretty simple and straightforward. Now, none of this would do anything if you just ripped it off the unit, which you could do if you were strong enough and had no fear of your parents' inevitable wrath. So the main thing keeping this on was fear of damaging the aesthetics of the console, and your parents at the end of the day. There really wasn't much else to this thing. It worked as a simple physical security item, and with it on you simply couldn't slide a cartridge into the system to use it, essentially making it useless unless you didn't follow the important step of removing the cartridge first. Or, if you're particularly sadistic, you could put some universally considered bad game like, I don't know, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in the unit before locking it. That'll teach those kids. As to influence, this honestly didn't have much. It was just one of those in a long line of products that was designed from someone seeing an issue and trying to come up with a creative solution. And it shows, because at most this thing sold 25,000 units, which is a percent of a percent when you realize around 60 million NES units were sold in its lifespan. This was simply not a problem that truly needed solving, at least not in this manner. Today we have more sophisticated ways of doing the same things with parental locks that can be set to allow certain windows of time children can play, but most of those just pale into comparison to parents just paying attention. In my mind at least, this was never really a real issue. As much as parents and the media complained about video game addiction, it always came down to parents setting boundaries on their children to solve the issue, either through discipline or taking the console away. Even just removing the controllers or the power supply would essentially do the same thing as adding this lock onto the unit. However, what do you guys think of this one? Do you think this is useful? Is it simply a fun gimmick? Would it be something you'd want to own for no other reason than the novelty of it? Let me know in the comments. And while you're there, if you can do me one more favor, please leave this video a like. And if you haven't, consider subscribing. That helps me out a ton. For now though, thank you so much for spending part of your day with me, and until next time, happy gaming!